Time keeps on leaving and we keep on moving. When do we pass on our wisdom to the youth? My veteran story, lost arts discussions, fireside chats with a bourbon or two. It's time to hear the stories by military veterans. Get yourself ready. It's the Lost Arts Podcast. The Lost Arts with Andrew Cox.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast. A podcast is giving a voice to our veterans. On today's episode, we're going to have a part 3 for my veteran story with Mike McNany. But before we get into that, if you're enjoying the podcast, then go to the website, and there's a couple of options that you could do if you want to help support. There's a monthly reoccurring donation, or you can do a one-time donation. Either one is fine. Or you can always go to the website and find that link to the merchandise, and you can buy some merchandise, cool hats like this right here, and I got shirts and all kinds of goodies there. But anything you can do to help support us would be much appreciated. And if you want to become a guest on the podcast, then email me directly at thelostartwithandrewcox@gmail.com. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Awesome.
Busy day at work. South Georgia's heating up, so I'm tired.
You got to love the summer heat, huh? It hasn't got there yet.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I think we left off. You were in Iraq. If I'm not, can you correct me if I'm wrong? But there was a Connex box that got hit, and you said at that point you were kind of shutting down, like it was all catching up to you.
Yeah. That was the. There had been a domino effect of incidents before that. I think we already mentioned, like, Gunny Lane was in June of. When we were over there, and just the never-ending nonstop crap coming in every day, it just takes a toll on you. And I think that day in particular, I just remember sitting down, and I'm like, I'm done. I just, mentally, it's like I didn't care anymore. And I don't mean that I didn't care about, like you guys there or what was going on. I was just, emotionally, I shut down. I changed at that point from who I was to somebody that just didn't. I don't really know how to explain it, the mental side of it. Literally, I became so emotionally numb to everything that it
like
just
out, and that way you didn't have to deal with them. Emotions were gone.
Yeah, if you just don't care anymore, at that point, it's like it seems to make things a whole hell of a lot easier. But that's not a way. I'm sorry, my dogs are.
Don't even.
That's not a way to live life, especially when you get back and have a family and stuff like that. So, but it's not. But that's stuff like that are things that we weren't. You understand the consequences of war and stuff like that, but you don't really. Me personally, don't think we were ever given the tools and the resources to deal with that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Like I've said before, I don't claim to be a combat Marine. I wasn't by any means, but those guys dealt with the same things and had to experience a whole heck of a lot worse. And several years after that, I remember talking, and I guess we can get into that in a little bit, but talking and to a counselor, and I was like, why is it affecting me, but it doesn't affect other people? And that just drove me crazy. But you remember before we were coming back, remember we had to go sit in a little makeshift chapel and do these little, this supposed class, it was prepping us to go back into the regular world, then it's like, okay, it just there wasn't enough. And you'd think we as a military, the Marine Corps, would have learned our lessons from, like Vietnam and the Gulf War, and people coming back to have things in place. Hey, we need to look at this stuff. We need to identify things and have things in place. But I think a lot of it is all intended to be self-reported, which is something that is not going to happen.
Yeah, very true. And the one thing that coming back, I just remember that one time sitting down. I don't ever remember anything after going and like, seeking help wasn't a thing, or maybe it was, we just didn't do it. But it wasn't readily available.
You able to see me?
Yeah. So yeah, I can see you fine. Yeah.
All right. You went out. I could see you, but you're all blurred out, and you were cutting out a little bit.
Oh, that's probably my Wi-Fi. Hopefully, it holds up.
That sounds like mine here in this house. Good Lord.
I'll sit up a little bit. Talk about when you came back, unless there's something else you want to talk about in Iraq specifically, but talk about when you came back. How was that for you?
I mean, initially it was fine. I mean, we were all just glad to be back. I mean, get to see your family, but I mean, it was it's like anything. It's a reintroduction into life. We didn't have what we were over there 8 months, 9 months.
Yeah,
and
8.
Yeah. Granted, we had some opportunities for communication and connectivity back home. But,
true.
that was a lot different than in 03 because that stuff just wasn't in place at that time. But it's still not the same as actually physically being able to see your wife and your kids, or to hug or kiss your wife, or hug your kids, or pick them up. And, so yeah, you're more than happy to be home. And a lot of things in my case, it didn't rear its ugly head till a little later. We got back to Pendleton, and we didn't go anywhere because we got 04. We didn't go anywhere in 05, did we? Was that 06 when the band joined with 5th Marines and went back over?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, because that was the year I left to go to repair school. The school that I had tried to go to times.
Say it again.
At instrument repair school.
Yeah.
I tried to go in 03. Yeah, I don't know if it's me or
it could be me because, like I said, I'm in the RV with the different Wi-Fi setup, so I'm hoping for the best.
But what I was saying is I had applied to the repair school in 03 and 04, and I got denied in 03 because the answer I got was if I had wanted to go to this school, I would have figured out a way not to deploy.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
that's how it works.
Yeah, it's just like the Marines that got stop lost, couldn't go anywhere when the war broke out. It's like, oh yeah, if you really wanted to get out, you could have. I mean, since when do you go into war and you're like, hey, I really want to go to this school. I'm thinking I'm going to sit this one out right now. And I was like, seriously? But, then
wow,
Dan Hungel got there, Master Sergeant and Master Gunny Hungel. I guess he got promoted after he got there. And he was a repair tech, and I really started talking with him and working with him quite a bit to try to improve, to get a better chance at applying again in 2004. And then, of course, we went back again. And I don't remember who all applied. I know Andy Kozane applied. I don't remember who all. What was her name? Or I think she was Paris Island. Flute player, Martha something.
Martha, yeah.
Yeah. She got to go. And I think, was it Streeter? I think Streeter.
Streeter's a drum major, right?
Well, it may not have been Streeter. Somebody, I don't remember who the heck it was.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It was from San Diego, honestly. I don't remember. But, that one kind of hurt too, because all of a sudden there's people applying that there was more than just them and me that applied, but they're all like, well, Andy had a B billet as a recruiter and things like that, and I love Andy Kozane to death, but it didn't make it sting any less. And he knew it.
Yeah.
And then one of them that got selected to go actually dropped the order, so they didn't want him. Changed their mind.
No kidding.
So they had an opening, and they still wouldn't. They're like, "Well, it's too late now. No, we're not pulling you to go." Because you remember Kozane left in like May when we were over there in 04. But yeah, anyways, we got back, and I finally applied again in 05 and got it that time. Got selected. But
and then you went from Pendleton all the way up to the Red Wing, Minnesota, right? For the school.
Yeah, good old school of
How was that?
Did you enjoy it? Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a nice break after the last couple years. Myself and it was Jose Espinoza, your buddy.
Yeah,
Jose Espy. Were the two Marines there in that class. Of course, they split us up, and I was in one side because they've got so many people in the program that they break it up into two different sections. It's like woodwinds and brass. So while one semester, one group's doing brass, the other was doing woodwind, and then you rotate the next semester.
Yeah.
And we just do the same class that they just did. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it because it's really what I enjoy doing is working with my hands and fixing things and learning how things work and repairing things and taking something that's looks like junk and making it brand new. So I was really excited about that. And I got a call one day from Mike Edmondson, Chief Warrant Officer Edmondson. He's like, "Hey, where do you think you're going after that?" And I was like, "I have no idea." I'd reached out to MPO 20 and asked them what choices there were out there. And I don't really remember now, other than Albany.
Right.
And Mike was like, "Well, I really use you here in Albany." And I was like, "Sir, I've already been there. I don't have no interest in going back to Southwest Georgia." I didn't dislike it. The only main reason I thought, man, I'd like to go back there is because I love to archery hunt, and I could archery hunt on base, and I bow hunted the heck out of that base when we had lived there before. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to get to go back and get to hunt, And it ultimately, like my wife was already, worked at the hospital here. So she had already been talking to people here, and they're like, yeah, if you want a job, you got a job here. We knew the area, and we're like, well, we could move back there and buy a house. And so that's what we did. I agreed to go to, come back to Albany. But we, not necessarily lived in Albany, but we lived the next city over in Leesburg, bought a house. And it was probably, we go back to the mentally shutting down and the numbness. It really started to hit me in Minnesota when we were up there.
Yeah.
And, Espy and I were close, talked every day, stuff like that. And he'd come up and eat dinner with us, and we'd go out and he'd come up to the house and hang out. But it was the separation from not being around the Marine Corps and around Marines in general.
Yeah.
You know, we were there with a bunch of. Granted, I think there was a couple people that were my age or a little older than me
Hmm.
by a couple years, but everybody else was 18, 19, 20, 21 year olds, you know, and all they wanted to do was do what they were, you know, what they wanted to do. And it just wasn't something that I wanted to do. You know, I had a family and stuff like that. So, you know, in a case like that, you know, my wife worked nights and she took a travel nurse assignment. And so she'd leave to go to work. I'd just be getting home from the school. And,
Hmm.
you know, we had two kids. Our son started playing hockey up there in Minnesota, and my daughter was in dance and all that. So as soon as I got done doing, you know,
Wow.
got home, you know, we had to, I was running in different directions, yeah, just like parents do. And I would finally start, you know, and get back, get them fed, get them cleaned up and in bed. And I'd start on homework and stuff at 10 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
start studying for
Wow.
tests. And, you know, I would do that till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and then turn around and get up to get them up, to drop them off, you know. But it was that it was there that things started. I started noticing changes in me, and my wife did too. But you know, we kind of caused arguments and fights, and but it was I didn't know what was wrong with me, and we, like I said, we left there and got to Albany. But I had really started. What you doing?
Sorry, I was there. I think it's my screen, my camera makes me fuzzy, so I probably need to clean it. But continue on,
Oh.
continue on as I try.
But yeah, but I really started to drink a lot at night, and I mean I still drink bourbon, but I mean I was excessively drinking at night and still studying and doing, you know, passing that, you know, the repair school. But it
Yeah,
was just, you know, and it's all an excuse, but it was just it it numbed the feeling. You know, I didn't know what the feeling was, and I remember one day because from where we lived in Hastings, Minnesota, to Red Wing, where the school was at, it's like an hour and 15-minute drive, something like that, maybe an hour and a half, depending on the weather, snow, and stuff. And every day I would pass this church. There's always, you know, cars there. And there was one day I was going down to school and was at school and driving back. I was hurting. I just, I knew something wasn't right with me. And I saw that church and I passed it. I kept driving and driving and I laid on the brakes and did a U-turn and went back to the church.
yeah,
And I walked into the church and there was, you know, I don't want to say it was a woman there, but I don't remember. She said, "Can I help you?" I said, "I don't go to church here. I drive by it every day." I said, "But I kind of needed somebody to talk to. Is there anybody here I could talk to? Is the pastor here, minister?" And she said, "Well, he's here. Let me go check." So he came out and he said, "Well, what's wrong?" And I was just kind of talking. I was like, you know, I was in Iraq and this and that, and I'm in the Marine Corps, and they sent me up here to go to a school in Minnesota, and you know, at Red Wing. And I said, "But I've been having, you know, some issues mentally that I don't know what's going on." And I said, I need to talk to somebody. And he goes, "Well, there's really nothing I can do to help you."
wow,
I said, "Well, I'm not asking you to help me. I just need to talk." And he goes, "Well, come to church on Sunday and then we'll see. Maybe we can talk then." And I was like, turned around,
wow.
and left. I was like, never went back in. I was like, yeah, screw you too. You know, and that was kind of my uh, thought. Don't get me wrong. I believe there's a greater power than all of us.
Hmm.
But you know, I know I believe you grew up going to church and in church, and you know I
Yeah,
did too. But I saw, as I got older as a kid, I saw where church was, it was like a battle of the families in the church to who could run the church and who could make the decisions for the church. And, it was the Sunday Christians. And it really, I don't want to say it gave me a bad taste for religion, but it wasn't something I was like, I can still believe in God, but I don't, or believe in something bigger, but I don't have to go to church to do it.
Yeah.
So I just kind of detached myself from going to church. But I didn't even to go back that incident too at the school at Red Wing. We all had like I think Jose and I had our own guidance counselor, and they handled, ordering all of our equipment, the Marine Corps stuff, all of our tools and toolboxes and everything we needed, which was nice because all the other students got a list and said, this is all the stuff you need day one you show up. So you better have it, where we showed up and it was already there, which was nice.
Is it all packaged up, sitting next to your workstation?
Yeah, it was, toolbox was there, and it was like, holy cow. But I actually went to speak to her one day. I said, hey, is there any, she said, well, if you ever need anything, let me know. So I went to talk to her, and I said, do you have a couple minutes? She's like, well, yeah. And I started talking to her, same like I was talking to this minister. And she's like, well, I don't really know what I can do for you. I'm more of a guidance counselor for education. I'm not a social worker. That's exactly what I'm not a social worker.
Yeah.
I said, well, does the school have resources for this kind of stuff? And she goes, well, you'd have to tell me what's wrong for me to be able to point you in the right direction. And I was like, I don't know what's wrong.
Wow.
And,
that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and it was just kind of in my mind, I was like, yeah, nobody cares. So just keep it to yourself. Just deal with it. Have a couple extra drinks tonight. And by morning, maybe it'll be better. But, it's kind of like what I'm doing now. But
well, that's two things in a row. While you were just seemed like there was nothing there to help,
Yeah. And I don't believe that, I may be wrong even. I mean, that was 2006. I don't know if the resources that are available now, which may still not be adequate. I don't know if the resources that it's even now were in 2006, like through the, through the military.
From what I know,
the Marine Corps.
When we went up and visited up there, it was much different. Like they were all about taking care of the Marines, making sure they had everything they needed.
Yeah,
trying to put them out with the community and stuff. Maybe it's changed for the better.
They were good for that, when we were there too. I mean, they loved us. Yeah. And I can't necessarily fault her for what, what she was saying. I can fault the minister. I mean, it's like, what, aren't you supposed to be here for people?
Yeah. That's kind of
your job. You don't know me, I don't know you, but I'm coming to you because I don't know. I don't know how to say it. Maybe I'm thinking wrong. I really don't know. But
no, I think you're saying it the right way. I mean, now growing up in church, my dad was a minister, stuff like that. But it's just like being a Marine and counseling Marines. They're going to come up to you, and they're going to have an issue right then. You're busy doing things, but you're like, okay, I'll put my stuff on the back burner, and then I listen to it, and we try to figure it out, take them wherever they need to go or whatever. It's the same type of deal. If you're a minister, if you're practicing your sermon or something like that, you put it on the back burner. If somebody's there and asking for help, you help. That's your job.
Yeah.
At least.
Well, that's what I assumed, but I could be wrong. It doesn't mean they're all that way, but
true.
I think if I remember, he was like,
sorry, they don't all get training on that type of stuff either. A lot of them, like depending on and stuff, like there's no training. It's just, it's kind of how my dad was. He didn't have any formal training to become a minister. He just started doing it. But you never know.
Yeah. Well, the big thing for me is sometimes everybody needs somebody to hear them, just to listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you may not have any answers to what I'm asking, but just listen to what I'm trying to say to you. I mean, just listen. And a lot of times, if you let somebody talk to you, that person can figure out the answer to their problem sometimes just by talking. You know, and that's really what I needed. And it, you know, my wife since then has said, well, why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you say something? I said, because I didn't want you to know something was wrong.
Yeah.
You know, what did you want me to say to you? You know, I think I'm broke. Something's really fucked up with me, and I'm screwed up in the head, or, you know,
Yeah.
do you know, and that's like she said, well, that's what I'm here for. That's what you're here for me. She said, if I came to you, would you think differently? I said, well, no, I wouldn't. She goes, well, you know, why did you think I was going to think differently of you? And she blamed herself on a lot of things. She said, I saw the signs and I just ignored them, or wanted to think you were just being a jerk or being an ass about something. And it was like, no, I just, you know, I love my wife, you know, and I love her today. But anyway, I've never been a guy that, because I didn't grow up in a family where everybody was super affectionate and held hands, or see my dad go up and hug my wife or give her a kiss or say I love you or stuff like that. I didn't grow up seeing that. So I had to almost force myself. I mean, that sounds terrible to say, but force myself to do it, you know, with Kelly when we were girlfriend, boyfriend, and got married. And once I started doing it, it became a habit.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't something strange to me anymore. But then mentally where I was at, I reverted back to, yep, we're in the same house. Love you too. You know, stuff like that. And, you know, there was no emotional connection between us at that point. And, you know, and when we got back to Albany, I had actually checked in. You know, you do a little check-in sheet. It was over because they built a new Navy clinic since we had been here last, but when we left in 2001, but, you know, it was in the old Navy clinic, but they had, I don't remember what it's called. You probably can tell me that it's like people that dealt with like when you're getting out and stuff, you could go to them and say, you know, like college credits, what you,
resource,
you know, yeah,
resource counselor or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And when I checked in I was over there checking in, and he, you know, he said, where are you coming from? And I told him, and for that, you know, I was at Pendleton and talking to him about stuff. And he goes, how you doing?
Oh, I lost you. It's probably me. When you come back on, you're going to have to repeat that. Yep, totally lost you. Yep. Okay, you got to go back. You checked in, and he said,
he said,
are you?
You know, how are you doing? You know, he'd asked where I was coming from, all that. And at the time, I had gotten promoted to Master Sergeant in Minnesota. So he's like, well, how you doing, Master Sergeant? I was like, said, I'm fine. Ready to get to work, do what I got to do. And he's like, no, really, how are you? I said, I'm fine. He goes, why don't you sit down for a second? And he goes, I'm being dead serious. You know, he was a counselor too, but he was like, no, I'm asking you, how are you doing? I said, he goes, I don't believe you. And I was like, I said, I don't know what to tell you. He said, well, he said, yeah, you're in a band. He said, I know we're in infantry and all that. But he said, Ramadi and that area was pretty rough. He said, so, you know, he said, I'm sure you saw some things. I said, yeah. But I said, I'm fine. And he goes, I need you to be honest with me and tell me if you need help. I said, help is a death sentence, man. I said, I come to you and telling you I need help. I mean, what? And he goes, well, it is, but we do our best for it not to be that way. I said, okay, well, if I need you, I'll come and talk to you. He goes, okay. So, hell, I probably wasn't there even 3 months, and the world just fell apart with me. I won't get into great detail with it, but my Marine Corps career basically ended at that point. And I had to, I was directed to go to mandatory psychologist, a psychiatrist, and all that stuff. And there's something to be said about show up to your house and the damn county sheriff's got 6 cars sitting out in front of your house waiting to pick you up for something, and your life completely just disintegrates at that point. And I was going to say something, I don't remember what I was going to say now, but everything changed in the snap of a finger, literally in a 24-hour period. I mean, and my wife wanted to remain optimistic about it, and I'm done. She goes, no, you're not. I was like, no, I am done. She goes, well, you're quitting. I was like, I'm not wanting to quit, but what I'm telling you is my career is over. There's no. She goes, well, you need to be optimistic. And her dad is retired Air Force. He did 27, 28 years in the Air Force as a interrogator. Wow. And then went over. Then he retired on a Friday. He came back on a Monday as a GS-13, working for the Pentagon. But he was interrogator, ran security for the Joint Recovery Task Force or agency. I forget what it's called now. But if you like down pilots and stuff, they go in. But they ran the SEER school and all that kind of stuff. He's like Richard Marcinko. He's like 6'4", big mustache and handlebar mustache and real deep voice.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, you're fine. It's going to be fine. And I mean, instantly, everybody that I was ever friends with or even knew at Albany, everybody it's amazing how, and everybody just turned their back on me in a heartbeat.
Uh-huh.
And,
probably trying to distance themselves is probably what it was. Yeah.
Yep. Which I get and I understand. But, then at that point, I'm like, okay, well, I need help. And they're like, well, she should ask for help earlier. But it was going to the psychiatrist. And then he's like, yeah, he wanted me to go to a psychologist. And the psychiatrist, I was in there for 15 minutes talking with him. And he's like, he goes, how long have you been dealing with this? And I said, a year and a half, couple of years now. Talking about basically what we've already talked about in this, this episode. And he goes, you have PTSD, right? I was like, I don't. I'm like, I'm just a screw up. I'm a failure. And he goes, I'm telling you right now, you have the classic signs, everything you have, because he even talked to my wife, Kelly, about it. How's he act? How's he this way? And she was like, he's emotionally disconnected. He doesn't care. I'm not saying I didn't care about my family, but I didn't, was constantly losing my temper. I've never been a violent person or hit or punch holes in walls or, crap like that. But I would just get extremely agitated real quick.
Yeah.
And he's like, you got to go through counseling for this. You got to go through counseling. So I went to the psychologist, and I had 2 sessions a week with her for like 6 months.
Wow.
And she started doing they call it EMDR, but it's like an rapid eye movement. But it's like it's like a light bar, but it's like you're sitting there looking at the front of Kid and Knight Rider going light flashing back and forth, and you got to
Right.
sit there and just follow it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and sit there and watch it for a minute or so. And it's like, okay, when can I quit doing this? And I'd stop, and she's like, look at the light and follow the light till I ask you a question. So I just kept doing it, kept doing it, kept doing it, kept doing it, kept doing it. And finally, she started asking me questions. And I don't know what session or at what point it was, but we got to the Connex box or the quad con and got hit by and I think I had said in the earlier podcast that quad was full of CS. So,
Right. Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
I couldn't see, eyes are water running out of my face, everything else. And when she asked me that question, I said, it talked me through everything that happened at that moment. I started, because I had met Peyton as he was coming back from medical, and all of a sudden we heard the rocket go off and it hit, and he ran to the truck company barracks, and I just stood there because I'm like, what? And I ran to it, but experiencing that, the minute in the story that I came in contact with that CS gas and the pepper spray, all of a sudden, sitting in her office, water just started running out of my eyes, and I had snot dripping out of my nose. And I actually had a physical reaction at that point, because I was literally sitting there like, I'm like doing this, and I'm like, and she's like, why are you doing that? I'm like, I can't see, and literally just, it was running out of my face, just dripping down like you just came out of the gas chamber or something. And
yeah. Wow.
And then I started bawling like a little baby, but it was then that I finally realized what was going on with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I even tried to get out of going to the damn sessions, but I was told I had to go. And my wife's like, well, you're going even if you didn't, they told you didn't have to go. The Marine Corps told you you're still going. I was like, all right, I'll go. But it was at that point I finally realized the severity of all of them. And it took quite some time seeing her even like once a week or once every couple of weeks, or to the point of, once a month, or if something was going on, I would call, say, hey, can I get in and see you sometime this week or something like that. But
yeah.
But while I was doing all that, then, I was discharged from the Marine Corps at that point. And that was the other side of it too, that, something, all I knew in my adult life was the United States Marine Corps and being a Marine. That's all I knew, as an occupation. Yeah. And I literally I was like, I'm done. I don't know what to do. So they had me on Prozac and shit. And I used to sit at the kitchen table staring out the window in the morning when the kids left to go to school with a cup of coffee. And they would get home from school, walk in the house, and I'd still be sitting there with a cold cup of coffee.
Wow. That's wild.
I got to the point with that where it's like, I can't take that crap anymore. Then they put me on something else. I wanted to say Cialis, but that's for a different condition. But which, when they took me off the Prozac and they put me on the next thing, caused that condition. I remember going back to the psychiatrist. He's like, yeah, he did one more follow-up after he was in Marine out of the Marine Corps. He's like, yeah, you just continue to go to the psychologist. And I was like, because he's the only one that can write the prescription. She couldn't write prescriptions. And I was like, yeah, you need to take me off that. And he goes, why? If it's working, you need to take it. I said, it's working for what it's intended to work. I don't like how I feel on it, but I said, other parts of me are not working. And he's like, I'm not understanding what you mean. And I just flat out said, my D isn't getting hard anymore, doc. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, I got you. Oh, okay. I got you.
We got a pill for that.
Yeah. Because I got what he said, okay. Say no more. I got you.
Oh, yeah. Those are the fun things right there that you have to cherish those moments of the embarrassing talks with Doc of that nature.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, but like I said, without going into extreme details and stuff like that, what happened with me. But if I could, Andrew, if I could do anything over again, is I would have accepted consequences of saying something. If it cost me my career, if it cost me promotions, if it cost me, and it didn't just happen to me. Everything I did affected my family.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was the mental aspect of my wife and the burden she had to take on, because she basically had to become a father. She had to be mom and dad. If it hadn't been for her,
Right.
I don't know, we as a family would have survived. And I remember her, honestly, after everything happened and we really sat down and talked after counseling sessions, she was so angry with me, and she had a right to be angry that, why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you this? Why didn't you that?
Yeah.
And I said, what did you want me to tell you about what we saw in Iraq or what we did or what? I said, it's not something, people don't come back and talk about to their spouse, it's not something. I said, my biggest worry over there was you guys. Well, we were fine. I said, yeah, I know. I understand that. I said, and it's still a trait of mine. I don't worry about myself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that highly of myself to think that I'm deserving of some things in my life or things that I've had. And I don't think, and that's why, it's like being a cop. If you talk to a cop or a firefighter or anybody like EMS or, the stigma is if you reach out for help, it's going to have a negative impact on your career.
Yeah.
And that's a terrible way to look at it. But I think that's the precedent that had been set for so long. And hell, you know as well as I do, we got back from Iraq the first time, even the second time in 2004. We started hearing, somebody said they had PTSD. We're like, oh, bullshit. No, they don't. They're weak. They don't want, bullshit. None of us wanted to believe in that crap. It's like, no, they do not. That's garbage. Well, I'm here to tell you it's true. And it's because of that
it's
mentality.
taken years and years to figure that out, like as a military. We knew it happened in previous combat and stuff.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, especially the Marine Corps, they're so I don't want to say strict on it, but if they see weakness in somebody, they're going to push away, or at least it used to be, and now it has changed quite a bit.
Yeah. I just don't understand why we can't. Well, we talked about it before that, all of our return briefings and crap like that we were supposed to get, we never got. And I don't know if that's just because things weren't in place yet. But, we were supposed to do as soon as we got back, it was either within days or 30 days of coming back, we were supposed to all have, is a
Not only
unit, a briefing.
we're also supposed to get like you're supposed to get like 30 days and that type of thing.
Yes.
I don't think we did that because we came
No.
back playing. Like,
No. Well, yeah, we
So-
no, we didn't get that. And then there were supposed to be continued like one-on-one checks with everybody. And that was one thing in my SIPS board, even the attorney brought up that he said, none of this stuff is in his medical record or his service record. That any of this, did you ever get any of these? I'm like, hell no, we didn't get them. And they're like, well, that was all mandatory stuff. And, that should have been, you got that, but it just wasn't documented because it wasn't required to be documented. And it's like, I did not. You guys were quick to give me smallpox and anthrax, but you didn't want to give me
yeah, they were.
any of that crap before, But
That's it. Yeah,
I
they
hope
to
things
get
are
that
better
out
now.
for sure.
Yeah. But I hope things are better now.
Yeah, they're definitely better than they were. And in the medical field specifically, like when I went to the doc, it took years and years and years. So I'm talking like, I'd say maybe 3 years ago, right? I go into the doc and I'm like, hey, look, my wife wants me to come in and talk, da 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 da. And so I sat down with the doc and he was like, okay, so give me a couple minutes. And he walked out, comes back. He's like, okay, I got you a therapy appointment. We're going to start on some medication and we're going to get you lined out. And I'm like, am I that messed up? He's like, well, I wouldn't say you're messed up, but you have some stuff you work through. And I was like, wow, okay, yeah, sure. So, and I will say it's the only time in my entire career that I've literally had somebody from medical give me a call and ask me how I was doing. It was like within days of that first appointment, somebody actually called me on the phone and did that every month. Every month, somebody would call me and be like, how are you doing? So, and I never in my entire career up to that point. So that's why I say I think things have gotten better. Perfect, probably not, but better, yes.
Well, as long as there's movement forward, that's all that matters, I guess. But
True. So and you got separated, and you're still there, stayed close by at least in Georgia area, right?
Yeah, we're still in the same house we bought that we moved into. Yeah, we.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, at that point, the kids were a little established here, and they didn't want to move, and we really couldn't move. The housing market had fallen apart. We really couldn't afford to move anywhere. Really had option to go anywhere. And it sucks when you go. My wife worked, but she started picking up extra shifts and doing this. Again, I go back to her because she made it her mission to not let what happened with me affect them. So they still got to do their activities, and they did, intramural football or gymnastics and band and things like that. And my son got, started playing hockey down here that he had started in Minnesota, in Columbus, Georgia, which is an hour and 45 minutes north of us. So once or twice a week, we were driving up there for him to play hockey, and really and truly, we couldn't afford to do it because at the time I didn't have a job and she was busting her tail, as a nurse.
Yeah.
And, that's a humbling experience that when you're on track, we had a plan in place with investments and things like that. At that point I was at 16 years and some months when all this happened with me. And, we had a plan at 20 years if I chose to retire, which I was leaning towards 20 years. But if I needed to go to 21 or 22 or whatever, that, we were going to be in a good spot for me to retire for us. But all that came crashing down We had to cash out a lot of our investments and life insurance policies and crap like that, and still had our, still had our house foreclosed on twice and two cars repoed. And I say that all because of my actions, all because of me, all because I didn't ask for help.
Well,
And
as you look, right, what advice would you give to everybody? Like, I know you already mentioned, like, go seek the help, go out and talk to somebody.
yeah,
But I mean, there are many individuals that have been in your situation, right, and saw themselves away from the Marine Corps, and I'm sure that was an incredibly difficult time. Once you left the Marine Corps, you're kind of you're on your own, and nobody ran around to deal. What advice would you give people?
there are resources out there, and there are people in place for that. Don't be ashamed to go to your command. Don't be ashamed to go to your staff NCOs and talk to them. Tell them you need help, whether it be alcohol or tobacco or the mental health aspect of things. You need to swallow your pride in that case and consider it's not just you that you're affecting, it's the people around you. You're not doing, what are the leadership traits? Mission accomplishment and troop welfare.
Well, yeah.
Mission, whatever. I'm saying it wrong. Those aren't the leadership traits, but
traits. Yeah, but that's the mission of the Marine Corps, right? Something like that, leadership.
But but in the process of taking care of accomplishing the mission, you have to take care of the Marines, and that includes you too. You have got to take care of yourself, because you're of no use to anybody, including yourself, if you don't.
Very true.
Sometimes you've got to swallow your pride and say, hey, something ain't right. I'm not, I need to go talk to somebody. And I think, I'll never say you, but I think a lot of us were guilty of that, even coming back from Iraq, that we probably even failed those junior to us by not actively. I mean, we all talk to each other and, hey, how you doing? Things like that. But, I was never trained in that.
Yeah, that's that's a big part of it is there wasn't training put in place for us to be able to deal with that.
Yes.
And nowadays there is training in place, and they talk about how to deal with that, who the resources are, and those types of things. Whereas, back then,
yeah. And I thought about that, and I even talked to my wife about it. And I was like, in the process, I said, I'm sure I failed and turned my back on people and didn't even realize it. It was never my intent, and I'm sure I did. And that's one of the worst feelings in the world, when everything or people that you trust literally turn their back on you.
Yeah.
When you make a phone call to them and they won't even take your call.
Yeah, I don't think that that you were like that. In my humble opinion, I've known you for a couple of years, but you never treated me that way.
Well, I'm sure there's Marines out there that have a disdain for me, that dislike for me. I'm sure. But I mean, and I don't blame them, because I'm not. Sometimes I don't like myself.
Nah, you're a great guy.
I mean, that's actually an important thing. Saying that when everything happened, anything I had in this house, anything, my wife would get like little Marine Corps collectibles and shit. I took everything down. It wasn't up till about 4 years ago I actually put stuff back out.
Okay.
Yeah. I never displayed my NCO sword. I wanted as far away from it at all as possible. I didn't, I didn't get to leave the Marine Corps the way I wanted to leave it. And I went from stages of embarrassment, and then to sheer anger over months to, I've got to move on. I've got to put all this behind me. And it's hard because I would literally look at myself in the mirror and be like, you suck, dude. I freaking hate you. You're a terrible person. You destroyed your family's lives.
If anybody can talk negative about somebody, anybody in the military, when they're looking at themselves, can do that.
Yeah.
It comes very easy, and I think it's important to remind yourself, remind everybody that hey, it's not as bad as you think. There are people out there that care. And,
yeah. Well, I was, that's the stage you saying that there's people out there that care, but you get to a point where you just can't see anything. You can't see it because you don't want to believe it, because you have yourself so convinced that you are worthless and useless. I mean, I went through a period of time, and I'm embarrassed to say it, and I really hadn't never really talked to Kelly about it a lot until recently. And I say recently, the last couple of years, but I was at the point where I didn't want to live anymore. I was done.
Yeah.
And I used to
Yep.
Go to that.
Well,
go ahead.
What was it then that kind of pushed you on the other side of that? Like, how did you get through that?
I think it was time. I think finally one day, I don't remember what, I really couldn't say specifically what it was, but I think I think I had said to Kelly, because I don't remember what happened. We weren't really necessarily fighting, but we were kind of arguing about something because she was getting on my case, saying you need to, you're not the man I knew. I didn't get Mike back. I got you back.
Yeah.
And she didn't mean it in a negative way. She was just being honest. And she said, I've learned to understand that that's what I've got now, and it is, it basically is what it is. But she had said to me, she said, that's all she wanted.
Yeah. She wanted to
yeah.
make it.
But
yes.
She had said to me, I said, well, Kelly, I have nothing to offer you. All this, everything I've done. And she goes, I said, I have nothing to offer you. And she goes, I don't need you in my life. I don't need you. She said, you're in my life because I choose for you to be in my life. That's why you are in my life.
That's a
and I think that day, and it was that conversation when she said it, and I just stood there and looked at her. I was like, geez, thanks. You don't need me. And she goes, I make money. And she flat out told me, she said, I've been a mother, I've been a father, this and that. I've done all this crap. I don't need you. And then, then it's the comment of what I needed from you, I already got. Your son and your daughter. I don't need you for anything else, kind of deal. And the stress of, to go back a little bit, like the stress of everything that happened with me. And I say, it's not just you, it impacts everybody that you care about and love. Is she started having medical issues and medical conditions and had to have, procedures done because of the stress and the strain and the emotional toll it took on her. And like she said, if I needed you, do you think I would still be here after all of this? She said, the only reason I'm with you here right now is because I want you here. She says, you've got to either understand that or you need to leave.
Wow.
And I think it was at that point that I was like, okay, I need to quit being a big baby, and I need to, and it wasn't a sense of being a baby. It was, I need to quit feeling sorry for myself, which I still do, and not in the sense that I like, oh, woe's me, but I still think low, don't think highly of myself or low, but I had to come out of that funk, and whether it be working or I had to find a purpose other than what I was at that point.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
What? For me to you, I will tell you, my father was a Marine way back in the day, and you might have been there when he came out to visit at Pendleton. But so he was a Marine back in the day, and not a great Marine. We'll say that. Came in a private, left a private type of thing. So he only did 3 years, but it wasn't successful. And he went on, to do all kinds of great things. He's a great man, a great father, all that type of stuff. And no matter what, I think, this is just an outsider looking in, me to you, but I think you've kind of done the same thing. I've known you throughout this whole period, and I see a different person today than I did, when all this first started happening. It's a completely different change, and I think you're doing fantastic.
I appreciate it. Still some things I need to work on, but hey, that's life in general.
We all need to work on things. But it's okay. What are you going to do?
but I mean, it's been, guys like you, Andrew, that, I really removed myself from everything and everybody, because I was like, if you want to distance yourself from me, then I don't want a part of anything with anybody. I don't want to talk to people. I don't. And I think, and it was really, I don't know how long have we been, talking like through Facebook or, texting. I think we've texted on and off over the years.
Yeah.
But, and it wasn't all the time, or it wasn't phone conversations all the time, or maybe it was once a month, or, hey, happy Father's Day, or something like that. But it was the fact that you never just cut ties with me, always gave me some kind of encouragement. I'm like, okay, well, at least, I still got a friend somewhere, and I think that was one big thing, was the camaraderie I lost, the sense of being part of something bigger than me.
Yeah.
Was gone. And it was, it was just the friendships. And a lot of that may have been my fault at that point, because I just kind of cut ties and said, well, let me just go over here in the corner and die. But, well, I've always appreciated what you've done. And anytime you've talked, or, uplifting words, or, things like that, or you just sent a picture, it's always been nice, and it's always made me feel good to know that you've always been there and you didn't forget about me.
I can't forget about you. You kidding me? You're a huge influence for me, over the years. So I appreciate it. And I've got to be honest, and I wish everybody would take this to heart, but don't give up on people, right? Don't always reach out, always say something. Be the one to reach out, because you never know what situation somebody's going to be in. Like, you said you didn't really want to talk to anybody, and it's really kind of how I make friends. I just kind of force myself on them, and I'm like, yeah, you're going to be my friend, type of deal. So, I kind of did the same thing with you. Just kept going.
You were relentless. You wouldn't give up. I'm like, dude, just leave me alone, man. Jesus. It was a couple of you, were the same way, and I was like, just leave me the hell alone. But I always appreciated it, whether I gave off that vibe that I appreciated it or not. But it took me a little bit to finally be like, okay, well, maybe I do deserve this. Maybe I do deserve to have people care about me or give a crap.
Absolutely. Of course.
Yeah.
I've always cared about you. I've always there. And, you know, if I failed in that in some way, please slap me next time you see me. But
Yeah, never. I probably want to be another 15 years before I probably see you again. So
no way. Are you kidding me? Here very soon, this podcast is going to take off, and I'm going to have to start flying you guys around the country to do podcasts with me or something. I don't know. I might have to figure it out.
we need to do
That's what I'm ready.
we need to do a Lost Art cruise and do the podcast from the cruise ship or something like that.
That'd be
All of us.
fun.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
would be a load of fun. Yeah. We can all
Man,
get
your girls would
personal
have a blast
cameras
on that.
Yeah. It'd be cool. We should do it.
You and the wife would probably be a nervous wreck by the end of the cruise, but
Oh, yeah, because we think Taylor would jump off the back of the ship. But that's okay. She always keeps me on my toes. We'll put it that way. Well, hey, is there anything else you want to share? Words of wisdom before we get off here? Anything like that? Foragers, if you want.
Just to reiterate, like you always, every time you're in the podcast, you always talk about, the suicide hotline or the VA hotline. I mean, if those resources are there and you have the ability to use them, use them. Don't be ashamed. Don't be embarrassed. Swallow your pride a little bit. And if you can get the help, I promise you, you will be much better yourself as a human being, and the people around you will be much better because of it. Don't ignore it. Don't, if you were suicidal, you do matter. You mean something. Even if you think you don't, you do. And I was asked that question by the psychologist. She said, have you ever contemplated suicide? I said, damn right I have. She goes, well, how many times you think? And I was like, I couldn't even count. I have no idea. She goes, well, why, and she flat out looked at me. She goes, why haven't you done it? And I was like, really? She goes, I'm honestly asking, why haven't you done it? I'm asking, you said more times than you can count. Why haven't you done it? And I said, well, that's kind of a effed up question. That's exactly how I said it to her. And she looked at me and she goes, well, it's an effed up thought that you keep having. And she goes, what? Why haven't you done it? And I said, I guess I'm just not jealous, but I said, I guess the thought that I would never see my wife or my kids again is something that I can't deal with. I said, they're my motivation on a daily basis, and the thought that what I would put them through, or the thought of me never being able to see them again. I guess the word is selfish. I said, I'm a selfish person. I can't bear the thought of not being able to see them or give them a hug or tell them I love them or things like that. And she goes, that's a good answer. That's a good thought. Stop and think about that if you are at that point. That those people need you, even if you think they don't. They do. The world needs you. Society needs you. Your friends need you. Not just your wife and kids, or sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, grandparents. You don't realize, and I've talked to several people over the last, since all this has happened, about that exact thing, and that have lost people that have committed suicide. And they're like, yeah, they said they left a letter and said they just couldn't take it anymore. So they were ending their misery. All they did was create a lifelong world of misery for us.
Yeah, that's very true.
And several of them were like, how selfish can you be? And I was like, well, I guess I'm selfish in a different way. I'm selfish in the fact that I couldn't bear doing it. So I don't mean to go a morbid route with things like that, Andrew, but I think that's things that
No, you're fine.
you want to address on the
But
podcast. And if you think anybody can benefit from it, then
absolutely, I do think people can benefit from it because there's, I mean, the suicide rate amongst veterans is very high. So there are people out there thinking the same thoughts. There are people out there that are in the same boat and trying to get through life on the day to day, and they're struggling with it. And just knowing, that there's somebody like you out there that has been able to overcome it, been able to push forward and seek the help and get the help and be able to overcome everything. That's fantastic. That's something that a positive influence on the people that are going to listen to this podcast. At least,
and the big, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was going to say that's my opinion about the whole situation.
And that's, people need to understand too, that are going through that. And it's, I remember asking one day, I'm like, so when am I going to be cured? When am I going to be back to normal? And she looked at me, she goes, you're never going to get cured. You're never going to be back to normal. She said, this is your new normal. This is who you are. She said, you can either accept that and move on with your life, or she said, or you can let it kill you. And she flat out said, she said, it's easy to kill yourself. It's hard to live. And I was like, yeah, you're right. But, it's not something that ever goes away. It's still a part of me. I have great days, and then I have some days that Kelly will flat out look at me. She goes, are you okay? And I'm like, no, not really. What's going on? But I had enough, counseling. You need to verbalize. You need to talk. You need to express how you feel. And there are some days when I start getting loud and I start almost like I'm yelling. And Kelly used to look at me and she'd go, why are you yelling at me? I'm like, I'm not. I'm just trying to get it out. I'm trying to get it out as fast as I can, And now she just got to the point she just stands there and looks at me. And if I start getting, I've got to, this is how I am feeling inside right now. And this is how it's coming out.
Yeah.
Once it's out, I'm like, oh, okay, I feel better now, but it never, what's that?
I had to turn a light on. My RV is getting dark.
Oh, but my advice is understand that it's never going to go away. You will get better. You will learn how to deal with it, but it's not something that's just going to be, there's no magic drug. There's no pill. That's just going to change it.
Yeah, that's very cool.
You have to learn, to use the resources that are there, whether that be going to counseling or call centers or even just your family or friends, just to talk to them.
Yeah.
Hey, Andrew, I'll text you. Hey, can I talk to you? Mm-hmm. Sometimes some things I don't want to talk to my wife about because it's just, their memories or bad thoughts and stuff like that. It's like, hey, you got a couple minutes just to listen to me? Yeah. Everybody needs an ear sometimes. And sometimes you don't have to say anything. It's just hearing it. Like, we had talked about earlier. So I think that's about all I can really add to it. I wish I'd actually thought about trying to go back to school to do counseling.
That'd be awesome.
To do that. And I talked to Kelly about it, but I've never pulled the trigger on it because that's one thing with me that I lost was my motivation on some things. I've got 1,000 good ideas, but I don't have a motivation to do any of them. Where I used to be like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, we're going to get this. Now it's like, man, I don't even want to get out of bed today. But I also attribute a lot of that to being 50 years old too. But
I didn't want to say that part of it. I was trying.
And then a couple of these at night, and I'm like, man, I really don't want to get out of bed.
I understand that. Yeah, I do. But yeah, hey, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing. I know it was probably not the easiest things to share, but I appreciate you doing it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of individuals out there. And like you said, reach out, call somebody if you need help. I had an individual that I've had on as a guest before. He called me up today out of the blue and was like, hey, look, and he just wanted to talk through some things. And, I just chatted, and, I didn't say much, like you were saying. But pain shared is pain divided. Laughter shared is laughter multiplied. Yeah. So, if you can share a laugh, share it because it doubles. And then, of course, be there to listen. You don't have to solve anything. I don't think we solved any problems when I was talking to the gentleman today, but I at least was there to listen. And I think that's important. So, but with that, to all the listeners out there, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for coming back. There's always options out there, like Mike was saying. The VA has some wonderful stuff. You can always dial 988, press option 1. You can also text 939-288. Again, that's 939-288. Or you can go on veteranscrisisline.net. You can hit on that chat icon. All of those options are going to get you in contact with somebody that can help you through whatever it is that you're having problems with. But one veteran life loss is one too many. I care about you. Mike cares about you. The entire veteran community cares about you. So please reach out for help if you need it. Mike, one last time, thanks again. I appreciate it. Everything that you've done and said since you've been on, much appreciated. To all the listeners out there, stay motivated. Change your socks.